Hello everyone, bringing you a video today which is covering another 75th anniversary, and this is something of a follow-up to the VJ Day video I uploaded recently. Obviously 2 weeks on from that, there was still a lot going on in spite of the official surrender of the Japanese. There were a lot of operations still being conducted in the Far East, and this is one of them. The handover of Hong Kong from the occupying Japanese to the Royal Navy, whose responsibility it was made to perform this task. And landing parties were sent ashore, composed of Royal Navy personnel, Royal Canadian Navy personnel and Royal Marines. And we're going to have a look at a recreation of a Royal Navy rating and a Royal Canadian Navy rating involved in these operations, and talk a little bit more about the events and what was going on at the time, the reason for Canadian involvement as well. As I say, it's the anniversary of this today, the 75th anniversary. It was celebrated as Liberation Day in Hong Kong up to 1997, and I thought it would be worth talking about this on the 75th anniversary. This gives the opportunity to talk about naval personnel, obviously in a landing operation, which is relatively unusual and quite interesting. And as I say, from the point of view of the ongoing events in the Far East at this time, immediately post the Japanese surrender at the end of the Second World War, it's very interesting from that point of view as well, and I hope you find it so. We'll get into the details now. We'll first have a look at a Royal Navy rating involved in these operations. It's not really possible to say that this is a typical rating because the weapons carried and the equipment used, some of the web equipment worn, did vary quite markedly from man to man, but this is one example. The ships involved in this operation were part of the British Pacific Fleet, and the landing parties, which were formed from both naval personnel and Royal Marines, were drawn specifically from HMS Swiftsure, HMS Anson, HMS Euryalus, and HMS Indomitable. As you can see, Royal Navy ratings were provided with khaki uniform for these operations, and specifically in this instance we can see a British-made khaki Airtex shirt, although Indian-made khaki Airtex bush jackets were also very common, and the trousers are Indian-made khaki drill battle dress trousers. The weapon carried in this instance is a Lanchester machine carbine, which is something I'll talk about more in future videos, I'm sure. Obviously an unusual submachine gun in modern parlance, machine carbine in British terminology of the time, with a 50-round magazine and the ability to fix the 1907 pattern sword bayonet, which is an unusual feature to say the least. Royal Navy issue quite an eclectic weapon, and as I say, something we'll talk about in a future video, I'm sure. Headgear consists of the white canvas ratings cap, and this is worn with the standard HMS cap tally. Something which is not official, but was almost universal and was tacitly tolerated by the Navy, is the wearing of the bow over the left eye as opposed to over the left ear, as it officially should have been. And the way this is achieved is by actually making the bow out of a separate piece of ribbon and sewing the tally together and then attaching the bow, essentially endemic in the Royal Navy during the Second World War. And this is an original tally, and that's how it's been done. Moving down to look at the web equipment, we can see that the pouches here for the Lanchester machine carbine are exceedingly large in order to take the 50-round magazines, quite clumsy from that point of view, and of course they include a pouch to carry the loading tool for these magazines. These are something we'll have a look at in more detail in a future video as well. The web equipment worn is a mixed set of 1937 pattern and 1919 components. During the course of the war, the Royal Navy had moved away from issuing 1919 pattern pistol equipment and 1908 pattern rifle equipment to issuing 1937 pattern, and we see a mixed set here. As I say, the belt is 1937 pattern. The Lanchester pouches are designed for use with the 1937 pattern, but could equally be used with a 1919 pattern belt. The braces are from the 1919 pattern equipment, and we can see on the right hip the water bottle carrier is also from the 1919 pattern equipment. However, moving to the left hip, we can see that the bayonet frog is from the 1937 pattern web equipment. Looking at the back of the equipment here, we can see the braces attaching to the back of the belt. They are essentially indistinguishable from 1937 pattern, and of course 1919 pattern and 1937 pattern were entirely interchangeable. Moving down to look at the footwear, we can see standard Royal Navy issue ankle boots, lacking the toe cap of course, and these are worn with Royal Navy leggings, which fasten up the side using laces and eyelets, and then finally with a strap and buckle at the top. These are by no means universal. Some ratings in period photographs are wearing these, others are wearing the anklets associated with the 1937 pattern web equipment, so a real mix there as well. So that's a look at a Royal Navy rating. As I say, I can't say this is typical, it is just one example of kit and equipment drawn from period photographs. The web equipment and so forth would depend on the weapon carried. The small arms used varied quite considerably. Rifles number 4, rifles number 1, Thompson machine carbines, Lanchester machine carbines, all are seen in use at the time. It's a real hodgepodge, not only in terms of the equipment issued, but also in terms of the small arms issued as well. We'll move on now to have a look at the Royal Canadian Navy rating, and their presence was due to the attachment to the British Pacific Fleet of HMCS Prince Robert. Canada had a distinct interest in the liberation of Hong Kong because of the deployment of Sea Force in 1941 to bolster the defences of Hong Kong. As a result of this, many Canadians had ended up as prisoners of war of the Japanese. The Prince Robert had in fact escorted Sea Force on its deployment to Hong Kong, and it was very appropriate that this ship was involved in the liberation. The Royal Canadian Navy was not only present to assist in the repatriation of Canadian prisoners of war, but Royal Canadian Navy officers and ratings were put ashore as part of the landing parties in order to secure Hong Kong. As you can see, Royal Canadian Navy ratings were not provided with khaki uniform, instead going ashore in their naval white uniform. And what we can see here is a white cotton flannel worn with white cotton shorts, which is essentially a standard form of tropical uniform for Royal Navy, Royal Canadian Navy and other Dominion navies at this time. The weapon carried in this instance is the rifle number 4. The Royal Canadian Navy did not employ quite the same selection of small arms as their Royal Navy counterparts, but nevertheless, rifles number 4, rifle number 1, and the Sten machine carbine are all seen, generally Stens being carried by senior rates, so petty officers and chief petty officers. Headgear again consists of the white canvas ratings cap, and here we see the biggest differentiation between Canadian Navy and Royal Navy personnel. You can see here the HMCS cap tally, modified in a similar manner as we saw with the HMS tally looked at previously. The web equipment employed is a set of 1937 pattern. You can see the basic pouches at the front here. On the right hip, the water bottle is carried. A point of note here, it's possible that the men in the photographs are using the 1919 pattern water bottle carrier. However, it's equally possible that these are Canadian-made 1937 pattern water bottle carriers, Canada altering their production of this particular piece of the web equipment to have the press stud on the front of the carrier as opposed to on adjoining straps over the shoulder of the bottle. On the left hip, the haversack is carried, and behind this, the bayonet for the number 4 in a 1937 pattern frog. When coming ashore, Royal Canadian Navy ratings were carrying full marching order. The packs were very soon dispensed with, leaving the haversack still carried on the hip, as we see here. Moving down, footwear consists of, again, naval issue ankle boots. Photographs do show this particular pattern of boot, which is in contrast to the boots issued to the Canadian Army at the time, which had slightly different details in terms of construction. And these are worn with long blue socks, which were essentially standard for junior rates when wearing this particular uniform. So there we are, that was a look at a recreation of a Royal Navy rating, and here a Royal Canadian Navy rating, involved in the liberation of Hong Kong in 1945. The duties of the landing parties were quite varied. Most men were employed on patrols, clearing out Japanese from vital parts of Hong Kong, notably the docks and other such areas. It had been 2 weeks since the Japanese surrender, and some civilian prisoners had been released and had actually returned to their civil administrative jobs, although they were in no condition for anything but light duties. The police force was similarly run down and suffering the ill effects of a long period of captivity, and so were unable to return to their duties, initially acting only as interpreters for naval patrols performing a policing role. Other Royal Navy and Royal Canadian Navy personnel would be involved in other areas supporting the civilian administration, including healthcare and generally getting Hong Kong back on its feet. This topic holds a particular place of interest for me. My great uncle was in the Royal Navy at the time. He was an electrical artificer, and his claim to fame was assisting in returning the trams to operation in Hong Kong just after the Japanese surrender. So this topic has a particular interest for me, and I hope it's been of interest to you as well. As I say, the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Hong Kong from the Japanese occupying forces. I do hope you found it interesting, as I always say. If you have and you'd like to see more, then please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the little notification button down below, which of course will alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you'd like to support the channel, you can. There's both a Patreon and a PayPal link down below, and as ever, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. It really is very much appreciated. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. There's Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, all linked down below. And if you'd like to make contact but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address down below as well. But that's everything I wanted to cover in this video, so until next time, bye for now.